Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends, we're back today with another quest video, this time for the Astra Militarum character, Commissar Yarrick. You know the drill, I'll show you each stage, the characters I've used, and some tips in commentary and text format. You can see the characters we used and the rarities required on this slide. Kyle, the Snowprint developer who designs these events, uses Gold 2 and ability levels at 42 for the legendary node. Accordingly, I have used the exact same cutoffs, but you'll have a much easier time if your characters exceed those thresholds. Before we enter the stages, here are two quick things about this quest. Firstly, we fight the orcs in this quest. They have the battle fatigue trait, meaning they have a 10 to 50% chance of fleeing the battle when one of their nearby allies dies. This can make repeating the exact runs I have shown slightly more difficult. Secondly, a quick reminder that the AI likes to target summons. Yarrick summons Cadian Guardsmen with his active, and if you can position carefully, then you'll be able to save lots of damage on your main characters. Common 1 is reasonably straightforward. I start by using Certus to push the middle orc backwards. I then take Yarrick to the high ground and use a basic attack to kill another orc. This opens up the middle for Vindicta to use her active and clear both sides of the orc force. For Common 2, we start by sending Yarrick along the left bridge and use his active ability on the orc on the far left. Bellator then summons using his active on the orc in the middle. Certus and Varro finish off the middle enemies. The Grots spend their turn attacking your summons, so your main characters are able to finish the battle on turn 2 without too much difficulty. Common 3 is tricky, and I haven't been able to reliably reproduce it without these characters, and I know they are rare and harder to get, so I'm sorry. On turn 1, we leave our two heavy weapon units stationary and maneuver Thaddeus and Azrael between them. As you can see on screen, both of these characters provide bonus damage to Sarquael and Certus through their respective passive abilities. Once we pass the turn, the two Overwatch units kill the oncoming enemies, and that really is the key move of the encounter. We can use Sarquael's active on turn 2 to kill the left flank of orcs, and the rest of our units clean up the battlefield. For Uncommon 1, we send Ulf to the top left of the map and use his active on the Grot tank. Azrael's active kills one orc and damages the other enough that Yarrick is able to kill it off easily. For Uncommon 2, the key is again using Azrael. Azrael's active will fire along the trench line and deal damage to the majority of the orcs. This should hopefully trigger some fleas, and then you can overwhelm the remaining orcs with your summons. If you don't have Azrael, you can attempt to beat this node with just summoners, but it relies on a bit more RNG. Uncommon 3 isn't pretty, as is often the case for the 5 character stages. There is no particularly key move, you just kill the enemies and ensure you are fully healed for the fight. Here I have brought in Syzus as a biological healer and Actus as a mechanical healer to fulfill those roles. Enjoy some sedate music while my units finish the battle. For Rare 1, we remain stationary and attack using Vindicta's active on the group of southeast orcs. If you need some help finishing them off, you have Tangita, or you can use another character of your choice. You then move Vindicta into the middle of the map. Yarrick tucks into the corner and summons two Cadian Guardsmen on the rightmost orc. The orcs should have their attention distracted by the Cadian Guardsmen, and we can clean up on turn 2. For Rare 2, positioning and turn order is important. We start with Bellator taking the damage power-up buff and attacking the bottom left orc. Isabella then takes the melee hits power-up and kills another orc. Yarrick takes the final power up and summons with his active. That is probably the key sequence for this node to make sure your characters are reasonably healthy heading into turn 2. I use Isabella's active and Bellator's active to refill the battlefield on turn 2, and you can finish the node easily after making sure your characters are healthy. For Rare 3, we start off by using Vindicta's active on the bottom left group of enemies. After attacking those enemies, Vindicta then moves up north and attacks those enemies too. I get lucky with a flea, but it shouldn't be required to use for this strategy. Yarrick summons with his guardsmen on the bottom right group of orcs, and Bellator uses his active in the middle of the map. The rest of the battle should be straightforward as the remaining enemies focus their attention on our summons. For Rare 4, I use the threat range indicator on the bottom right of the screen. That lets me move my units and puts Sarquael and Certus into position to deliver 2 Overwatch hits onto the oncoming force. On turn 2, Sarquael's active deals with the majority of the units on the right hand side. I get a bit lucky here with a flea on one Grot tank, but it isn't necessary. The remaining units work down the left side and Yarrick summons as well. The key is to try and focus on the Grot tanks. You should be able to finish the battle easily after the enemy attention is distracted by your summons. Rare 5 is another 5 character level, and accordingly, players face off against too many enemies for the solution to be artistic or have much flair. As with the other 5 character levels, it becomes a slog of keeping your units healthy and healed while whittling down the enemy forces. The key move that I have found for this battle is just to stay back on turn 1 so you don't get overwhelmed by the incoming Stormboys. Enjoy this replay of my run, even if yours might not go the same. Epic 1 is pretty straightforward. We bring Tangita and Actus alongside Yarrick. The Admechs create 2 Skitarii summons on the right flank, and Yarrick adds 2 Cadian Guardsmen to the left. Nothing too exciting here, the enemies focus on our summons and we finish the fight without too much difficulty. Epic 2 continues along the same themes. This time, our trio from the previous stage is joined by Thaddeus. We again summon with the Admechs and Yarrick, and Thaddeus just adds a little bit more damage to the fray. Otherwise, the battle plays out in similar fashion. Let the enemies focus on your summons and finish the battle. As I've said before, the 5-man levels and solutions aren't particularly elegant. I'm showing my Epic 3 solution here on screen for whatever it's worth. The key to this strategy, beyond having Isabella as a healer, is positioning Ulf in the middle of the map. Ulf's passive is useful against Snotflogger and the Grots he summons. Be mindful of the Stormboys that come in and will likely target your more fragile units. I struggle with showcasing the legendary missions for these videos because so much of the solution will be individualized to your roster and who you have leveled. The Snowprint developer for the quests uses non-legendary characters capped at Gold 2 and abilities 42. The run I'm showing now uses the exact same cutoffs, but you'll have more success if your characters are stronger. I've left my attempt here on screen for the sake of it, but it is unlikely that you'll get an exact replica with your own characters. I'll maybe sign off there. I now have a Patreon for my channel. If you are fortunate enough to be in a position to support me and my content, I'd love if you could check it out. Every so often I'll try and release a video slightly early for my Patreons, and as the numbers grow we'll come up with more benefits. If not, I've left my refer a friend code on screen. Entering it earns yourself 100 Blackstone and also supports me in the work that I do. It is single use though, so choose who you support carefully. Bye for now.
Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi.